New Age Business Briefings brought to you by the SABC and today sponsored by Telkom. And sitting in the chair today is the Minister of Communications, Yunus Carrim. You may have heard him speak a short while ago and he shared a lot of thoughts with us, and a lot of the policies that they're developing are geared towards you. He talked about ICT policies, internet access, and how to get it available to everybody, including you and I, at a cheap price. I think that's the key for you and I. But let's have a conversation with him, and remember, you too can be part of that. Hashtag TNA BizBrief or Morning Life SABC, and we'll get those questions through to him. We have an audience here as well of various role players and stakeholders that will be helping us in our conversation. Right, Minister, it's been a few months. How's the job going so far? Because you're number 5 since 2009. So it's a seat that rotates quite a bit, doesn't it?
It's number 4. I think I'm relatively safe because I think at least out in the elections, because I think we don't want to be in the Guinness Book of Records, right? But look, what is an advantage of the current president is that he's prepared to make changes to the cabinet, because obviously it's when a person's in that role that you can tell best whether he or she is cut out to best play that. He's often moved people rather than demoted them or taken them off cabinet. And some of these reshuffles may make industry and others uncertain, but they work, I think, ultimately towards drawing on the potential of people and their aptitude and abilities, which is only tested when you allocate it to a particular role. So the jury's still out on me. I want to stress, too, that I get this impression that people imagine somehow that I'm going to wave this magic wand and solve the problems overnight. That's not what we're saying. Our main goal, as you would have heard earlier, is to, until now in the elections, set a much firmer foundation for more effective service delivery over the next 5 years. And we will do an exit report. The Deputy Minister, Stella Indebeni Abrams, and myself, who apologized that she can't be here. She's in the Eastern Cape with a prior commitment. Our job is to present an exit report for the incoming executive and say these are the issues. And we're choosing, as I said earlier, our goals between now and the elections so that we are strategic in what we do. It's realistic and realizable, and sets the basis for firmer delivery.
So what are the most important things on your table right now that you think you can sort out by the elections?
Well, we've made considerable headway with the broadband policy, strategy and plan. The department initially intended to separate the policy from the strategy and plan, and we argued, the Deputy Minister and I, and the DG agreed, she's here, Rosie Sekesi, that you can't do that. So we've changed it quite a lot. We've consulted, we brought in the CSIR and a few experts, and we're pretty close to finalizing a further draft. But because there have been significant changes from the gazetted version of April, May this year, it's possible that we will confer with the industry and other stakeholders before we take it to SIP 15, Strategic Integrated Project 15, and to Cabinet. But whatever happens, by the end of November, as we promised Parliament on the 20th of August, we'll have some or other version of it out.
Okay, so a lot of these issues are going to come up from the floor and from viewers at home, but I just thought let's touch on a few, get very quick comments and thoughts. Digital television migration, are we going to make the deadline, 2015?
Well, that's not a question you should put to government. You should put the question to the industry here. Are we ready to go? Yeah. The public broadcasters, as you know, are feuding. Yesterday's Business Times covers, I think, the key issues. We brought all the public broadcasters and other broadcasters together. And we said, choose a facilitation team. They offered us names. We brought in a team. And we are in the midst of those negotiations. They're not moving as fast as we'd like to. The SABC board has to be inaugurated. We're waiting on that. But there has to be a cutoff point shortly. Then government will have to see whether we review our policy to change it. We are reviewing the policy, or to keep it as it is, or tweak it and do something in between. Our main concerns are to protect our electronics industry and jobs, and to ensure that new entrants don't use any government subsidies to create pay TV on the one hand, but also the high levels of monopoly and concentration in the industry are also reduced. Those are both government policies. And to give space to emerging entrepreneurs to have a say in the set-top box control. So in short, Whether we achieve that or not depends on government as well as other stakeholders, not least industry that's here and out there.
This set-top box, the more I've researched and read into it, it's quite a contentious issue. Talk to us about conditional access, because that seems to be a sticking point at the moment. And what is government policy? I'm understanding that conditional access is something that the world has by and large walked away from, and yet we seem to be running towards that. Why would we do something like that?
Well, you see, the policy started in 2008. The broadcast digital migration policy. It's been changed around 2011 and 12. And then the previous minister, Diana Pule, in May hinted that, well, she didn't hint, she said that we would, as the ministry and department, review the issue of set-top box control. For the people out there, decoder essentially, right? And she was meaning to take it, I think, to cabinet, but that hasn't happened. So we've got this facilitation process, which is exactly the review in a different form, more oriented towards consensus than perhaps she had intended, but she might have opted for the same thing anyway. We, as the ministry and department, have only set the framework for this mediation process. We haven't interfered. And we will now get an interim report from the facilitators this week. And as soon as the SABC board is inaugurated, the new one, we mean to bring the process back and finalize it in the next 2 weeks or so. So there are many reasons, many arguments for control and against control. As I said, our concerns are those three principles. At the moment, the DOC's view is very clear, Department of Communications. We do not have a strong view, either for control or against it. But we do have a strong view about the three principles I set out. So if control advances those principles, great. If it doesn't, great. But it's essentially about protecting our industry and jobs, our electronics industry. And I'm not going to cover that ground again.
I also get a sense that there are a lot of people involved in who perhaps can influence this process that have got a vested interest one way or another along the value chain. Are people declaring their interests? Are you aware of who has got an interest in the way policy is going to be shifted? Because we might be having a commission in 5 years' time if we don't sort it out now.
Yes, it's very transparent, I must say. It's easier for somebody coming from outside to see it because I'm relatively new, 10 weeks or so, and you're guided by not just knowledge and information. And let me tell you, being a minister, having the same cell phone number as you did in May 1995 and having the same email address you've got since 1998 means that you get flooded with information. A lot of it, actually, you have to separate the wheat from the chaff, the substance from the rumor. Almost everybody has a vested interest. It's either material or ideological. I teasingly tell everybody, I'm the only one I trust because I don't have any business interests here. And because I don't come with a baggage. I really don't, and I want to repeat this. I even offered to do a lie detector test. There's both sides. Those who want control and those who don't want control say, we don't trust you, right? So I say, okay, I'll do a lie detector test, right? I'm happy to do it. I really don't have a view. Then somebody said to me, no, it's demeaning for a minister to undergo that. But I'm still happy. I'm saying it publicly. Anybody wants me to do a lie detector test, Peter, you can kind of observe it. I don't have a view, right? So in short, what I'm saying is, we must, though, have a cutoff point. We're well behind schedule. We won't meet the June 2015 deadline at this rate. There are major issues, and if we're going to change the policy, it will mean a lot of work around engaging with the public and so on. So in short, let's actually get this thing done. I'm pleading. There are many representatives of the feuding parties here. Peter, we've tried. Maybe you can plead with them. Maybe the public, you know, people always go for government. I'd like to say they must march if they want to. Civil society has a right to, on the actors that are holding us up. We accept responsibility for our share of the, let's say, vacillations and confusion.
Can't you, as you were saying, that there comes a point where you must just govern?
Yeah. You know what? I want to say this. We accept our share of responsibility, but now we're ready to go. It's people here and out there who are holding us up. Okay. So really, to the public, please, government is on course. You put pressure on the relevant parties.
How is it countries like Tanzania are way ahead of the curve, and yet we are so sophisticated in terms of infrastructure and so on and so forth, and yet Tanzania, They're leading the
Well,
way?
actually, I won't mention other countries who are even less developed than Tanzania, who are ahead of us on digital migration, and some of them on broadband. It is regrettable because in the mid-90s, the issue of the super information highway was put on the agenda. You'll recall in Parliament in those days, we used to, everyone, say African Renaissance, which we understood, and everyone used the term super information highway. None of us understood it, except the deputy president at that time, right? So in 1996, it was on the agenda. It's regrettable. But it's not the end of the world. We can move very fast. We're quite capable of fulfilling the potential we have, as I said in my formal input. We can do it, but the deadline is looming very, very urgently. And we're pleading once again for cooperation from all the sectors.
All right. Again, a lot of these other issues will come up during conversation. SABC has a new board, and your detractors said this is too political. What are your thoughts on the board?
Well, firstly, Parliament decides. And clearly, if a majority party is as dominant as the ANC is, it would have the main say. And I think most public broadcasters, even in the established democracies, are invariably a site of tussle about who gets onto the board and what its policies are. It's not peculiar to South Africa, maybe because we're an emerging democracy, a developing society, that some of these things come out in a more crude form. But if you look, for example, at the war in Iraq, if you look at how the broadcasters were used to say that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Look at the role of the BBC, the complexities. One person committed suicide. Look at contestations around embedded, what was it called? Embedded journalism and so on. There's a wonderful cartoon Zapiro had about it, I can recall, which I wouldn't want under 12-year-old to see, but if anybody remembers it. In short, this in some form or another happens in almost all societies. It's perhaps cruder here because we're an emerging democracy. But we keep telling the SABC, you do not have to serve the government, and you shouldn't, or the majority party. Serve the public interest. Those of you who support the party, by serving the public interest anyway, and since the majority in that public, as will be shown in April, May next year, I can assure you, votes ANC in any case, so what? If you serve the public interest, you are vicariously or in a roundabout way consistent with the Constitution and the legislation that applies to you as the SABC, serving the interests of the majority party. But don't do it crudely. There's no need for it. And you have a public interest to represent a diversity of views. And a country can only grow, only learn, only develop if a diversity of views are represented. So in short, let's allow this board to function. Let's not prejudge them. They haven't even been inaugurated yet, right? Let's give them a chance. But let's realize also that this country of ours, with its marvelous constitution and its laws, allows the public to put pressure on the public broadcaster and on government, the right of people to express themselves. We have daily service delivery protests in this country. We don't approve of the violent nature of it, the criminalized component of aspects of it, but people have a right to strike. They have a right to, they also have a right to, actually, we met the support, SABC coalition. We met them about 2 weeks after we met the SABC. And we asked the SABC, meet them, engage with them. But you can't co-govern like some of them seem to want to do. You're not the board. You can engage with the board, but you're not the board. So in short, we must allow people to have their say and give this board a chance. And people must also raise issues in the public domain about it. And the board itself, Mrs. Shabalala is here and others are here, must engage with the public.
I'm going to rush you, because just two more questions perhaps before we go to the table. Some of the entities in which you have a stake or an interest in, Telkom, what sort of future do you see for Telkom?
Well, Telkom, look, since Mr. Mabuza came in, and this wonderful team with Sipho Maseko, I'm not saying it because he was kind to me. It's genuine. They're a marvelous team, actually. Probably one of the better teams we have in the state-owned companies. Since Mr. Mabuza came on, I'm told the shares shot up from 11 cents to 24 cents. And after the AGM, I'm told the shares went up by 2% again. One newspaper seemed to suggest it's because I was smiling. Well, hey, I'm happy to smile more, Sipho, if that's the way the markets operate. It also raises this question about how markets operate through perception. They have a turnaround strategy. They've engaged with the Competition Commission. They're saying they're going to separate their wholesale from their retail part. The local loop unbundling, they said they're prepared to negotiate, but within certain parameters. I think this is a good board they've got. I think that as government, we have to be careful. We're both a shareholder, a major shareholder, and a policymaker, and those two roles have to be managed carefully because the markets get jittery, and we need them desperately, post-2008 in particular. So in short, I think Telkom's got a potential and a chance now that it didn't have before, but again, it must prove itself.
And then this Universal Service and Access Agency,
Yes.
just seems to just make the wrong kind of headlines for some time now. What are you going to do with this baby?
Yeah, there's a Gobodo report that's been finalized. Remember, it went to the president, and then he referred it to my predecessor. We have engaged with the board twice in the last 10 days. There are some proposals in that report. We want to engage with lawyers to see how we release it and when. And we actually are going to put a lot of pressure on the board to actually deliver. The mobile sector, we met them several times, they complain. Community organizations complain. I think the USASA board is aware that it has to do more, but government needs to support it more, but we also have to be firm. Where there's wrongdoing, we have to act decisively. The public expects that of us, and we have said, not least the president repeatedly, we are not going to accept wrongdoing. So on that, we're going to act decisively. We are conferring with lawyers on these matters, but we are engaging with the board. Also, we've asked for a meeting within 4 weeks, 6 weeks, a strategy meeting, so that we're very clear what we're going to do over the next year, even beyond the elections. And we're bringing in 1 or 2 experts to assist us who have reviewed the role of USASA over the years, not least from this ICT panel review that Joem Juacha heads, and that is on the cards for the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, and talking about transparency, because this is a big word that you said at the beginning, are you happy that this whole set-top box, digital migration, this process hasn't been corrupted? Because I hear people whispering in the corridors, and it seems like from day one, there's just been so many players, and perhaps money's even changed hands over time. Are you satisfied that this process hasn't been corrupted?
Well, if the information I get is to be believed, it has been, but where's the evidence, okay? The evidence is thin, but again, this is not abnormal in a market economy. Some of you might shudder and say, well, what's the alternative? Well, it's not unusual. It's just that, again, it takes place in a very crude form. There are also accusations, because I met one of the actors, that I'm being paid by them, and then I went to the other actor, and they said I'm being paid by them. And hey, I said, why don't you look at my accounts, which I actually am publicly saying I'm happy to do. I have no business interest, nor am I likely to have them, not at age 57, despite my heritage and my complexion and what you might think. I can't run my own household finances, so even if I wanted to enter business, I'd be a disastrous failure. So those of you who want to reach out to me for that reason, hey, don't have a racial stereotype, yeah? I am not cut out for business. I'm a former academic and an activist for too long, and it's too late now for me to enter business. So in short, the rumors here about me, they're just not true. Take me to the police and so on. So I too am being accused. Yeah. It's hilarious, actually.
Okay, let's go to the tables, because there's quite a number of people who've got questions to ask. Let's start at table 23, Bongani Sibeko. Table 23. And if you could be brief, and I'll get a brief answer from the Minister as well.
Good morning, Minister. It's nice to have breakfast with you. I come from the content creation part of the industry. Our concern is that conditional access will limit the ability of black manufacturers, and in the long term, impair our ability to have 100% black content or African content on DTT. It's a golden opportunity for us. You go anywhere in the world, especially I grew up in the United States, you turn on the TV in the United States, when you turn it on, it's 100% American content. DTT is the opportunity to have 100% South African content. And CA just seems to be a blocking mechanism, because a perception will go out there that now government has the ability to turn off your television, which means turning off our content. And that's a scary future. And by the way, congratulations for forming a board so rapidly, sir. Thank you. at the SABC.
All right, conditional access.
Firstly, Thabo and we have met. Bongani, sorry, have met with his team. They came in like such a large number. It was like a mass meeting. We were overwhelmed, and we told them, and we said it to Megan this morning, there is no way, but no way, we're going to exclude emerging entrepreneurs. I think I might have said that in my formal speech, and if I didn't, Peter, you're responsible because you were breathing down my neck as it were to stop, right? So in the actual formal text I had, that matter was addressed. Let me also say is that there's absolutely no intention on the part of the ministry and department. Rosie, will you confirm that conditional access, as it's called, one form of STB control, will be switched or will allow people to switch off? Look, it's the poorest of the poor, frankly, who need access to TV more than you and I, Peter, because they need some escapism from their conditions of material destitution. There is no way this government will allow that, so that's out. If conditional access reduces any chances of the emerging entrepreneurs to have a stake in 11 million households having these decoders stroke STBs, then that will not be acceptable to government, please be assured.
Okay. Table number 18, Lauren Kabosha.
Thank you. Good morning, Minister. In the past, South Africa manufactured and repaired to a large extent the telecommunications equipment used in the networks, which is now outsourced in the billions. And in the interest of job creation, is there an industrial development policy of the DOC that will be incorporated in the ICT framework that will promote recapturing some of that manufacture here in South Africa? And if I may, from industry represented through SACF, we have been so greatly encouraged by the fast pace in which you moved and have gotten ahead of the industry. Thank you so much.
Again, we met Lauren. It's the same faces that pop up. Not that you don't have a right, since you paid, to ask the same questions as you did, but it's fair. It's in the public domain. Firstly, I want to repeat, right? A lot of these are words from me. I speak fast anyway, Lauren, so, you know, it's delivery. Really, you must judge me not on my words. And it's not me, it's Stella and Abeni Abrams, and it's the DG, and it's the stakeholders in the industry. Where's the delivery? There's words. Judge me not now, and ask not now, but by April, May. And more importantly, after that, whoever comes in makes no difference. What have we done to foster faster delivery? But on your specific question, yes. DTI has already, that's why they're also involved in this facilitation process. They have a senior official there, because they have a policy on this matter. In the review panel, that Joam Joacha, if he's here, who could speak on it, it's also obviously a concern. I said, a principle is whatever we do, whether it's control with access, control without access, it's more complicated, as you know, Peter, but I mean, for the people out there, it's not fair to lumber them with the issues. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Cedric Mkabela, I think this is an issue that affects all South Africans. He says, my understanding is we are paying more than we're supposed to. When is this going to stop, especially for data and voice calls?
Again, why is he asking a minister of government who's on his side, wherever he is? Why doesn't he ask the people seated one or two tables away from him? The problems are with the mobile operators. Why doesn't he ask ICASA if they're here? Why can't they move faster? Of course, they will say, I see one of them smiling, they will say the government doesn't give policy directives on time, doesn't give you enough money and capacity. Yes, he's right. Peter Krutus is there. I don't know who else. The chairperson, wonderful chairperson, is there.
But are these costs coming down? I mean,
well, we met ICASA on Monday. They wanted to discuss various issues with us, one of which was, we're having this pricing policy workshop on Thursday. We're interfering with the independence. We said no. This is government's right. So we met with ICASA on the matter. they can speak for themselves if you allow them to, about to release regulations in the next 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks at the most. So by the end of October, possibly, mid-October to end of October.
Can we get a microphone to the chairperson? Just
and then
a quick
secondly, we
comment on
had
that.
a whole day pricing policy workshop on Thursday, and we set up a structure to deal with that. Yes, there's a gliding path that the ICASA has done. The cost of what they call termination rates have been reduced from, I think, R1.50 to about 40 cents now. And they're getting a further gliding path. But we're saying, please, it's desperate. Not just in the interest of the consumers, but industry and the economy as a whole.
Okay.
And the long-term interests of the mobile operators, although they're very short-termists, as profit-oriented companies, understandably in the market are.
Well, let's hear from. Do you want to stand up so we can just get you? And
why do you make an old man stand up? Anyway, my minister, you look pretty today. I must concur. When it comes to cost to communicate, it has always been a concern for ICASA. We made what was called gliding path. It reduced the price to about 14, but it was not enough. But we are also aware that as ICASA, we are sandwiched between consumers this side who want the price to be low and operators this side who do not want to run a banana infrastructure. So ours is to try and strike a healthy balance. And that is where we are, and we are always complimenting our minister so that all our regulatory processes and procedures are commensurate to policy.
Okay.
And so far, I don't know whether I mean policy or regulatory, because we are working very, very well together.
Okay.
Including USASA. Some of our offices in the regions will be shared with USASA. This has never been done before. Why? Because we want that grassroots. We want to close this so-called tale of two cities, the best of time and the worst of time.
Okay.
And the worst of time is where our people are. So we must make those things level. We level the playing ground. Since I'm living in borrowed time, why must I not do it?
You look young, man.
Can I just say very quickly, Peter?
Yes.
We want to balance. I think the ICASA chairperson, Dr. Ngove, is right.
Yeah.
We have to balance. I don't think the market should get too jittery. And I think both of us can find each other. So there's no difference in approach from ICASA and ourselves as a ministry and department.
Okay, an important question on access. Reverend Tulani Ngesi, table 24.
Good morning, Mr. Minister and the audience. My name is Tulani Ngesi, representing Controlesa Capital. I hear you talk about our rural communities, and yet our rural people always suffer the most when it comes to all these nice proposals and businesses. For instance, we've got schools in our rural areas who are suffering without internet access, without a telephone at school, and yet you've got a government institution that runs telecommunications. My question is, when will our people benefit directly or indirectly in all these processes? Because we come with all the nice businesses or proposals, and we believe that they're going to benefit our people. At the end of the day, they don't benefit our people. You can go to any rural community today, and now NHI is coming. We've got clinics in those rural areas. There is no connectivity in those rural areas. So, Mr. Minister, please make sure that our rural community benefit indirectly by job creation and also skills. development in our rural areas. I thank you.
Minister?
No, we entirely agree. In fact, as I said, this digital divide could worsen inequalities. It's the rural and underserviced areas, right? Now, we engaged with, the Deputy Minister is responsible for e-connectivity with schools, and she says that she's engaged with the mobile operators to cooperate more. 788 more schools between now and the end of this financial year. 50 post offices are poor. We met them on Monday at the AGM. They've affirmed that this progress is happening. They're here, they can speak for themselves. Usasa Chair is here. Maybe she wants to say something. But we are saying to you, yes, we're on the same page. In fact, perhaps it's correct to say this, that more than in the urban areas, it's the rural areas that need ICT. Those people need to be liberated. And the mobile phone, forget a tablet and a personal laptop and so on. The mobile phone and its enormous potential. Look at this M-Pesa banking for the unbankable, so to speak, in Kenya and what it's done. Look at Gauteng for what it's worth. It's not a rural province, yes, but it's rolling out next year. I'm told 2,200 schools with a laptop and so on. So in short, it's mainly for the rural areas, mainly for all the things our friend there says from Controlesa, that we want to actually ensure that ICT works.
Okay.
And he's welcome to make further representations to us, but I see the Usasa Chair is here, she might want to add.
Okay. Table number 11, you forgot to put your name, so I'm assuming that you know who you are. Table number 11, if you could get it. There we go.
Thanks. Good morning, Minister. I think the actual question has been asked. This is about digital migration.
Okay.
And my
so
question was about, are we actually going to meet the deadline?
All right. Well, we have to. We have no choice.
Yeah, we have no choice.
Yeah.
It'll mean we'll have to hurtle forward once we get over this current impasse.
Okay. Table 23, is that Dr. Love? Table 23, Dr. Love himself.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you. I just want to find out if, from your perspective, the department has any policy to deal with issue of communicating and socializing health to try and curb a process where you'd find that they would say there is no, you'll find the headlines that they say there is no Panado at Bara, and you know, just by common knowledge, Bara is not supposed to be treating things for Panado, but for scheduled medication. And now you find that there is a divide between communication of health, and health is the first language of life. You wake up, you want to find out, are you okay, are you all right? So I want to know, is any policy framework from your department to try and speed up a communication process and a platform that must be developed for this country?
Yes, we met the policy review panel of Mr. Joam Jocha as chair about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and they invited various departments, including the Department of Health, and we asked the Department of Health what's happening in this regard. We have to work obviously closely with them. The aim, and it is disappointing we haven't got even to a modest extent of that, and all of us collectively are responsible, no one in particular, but we mean to do that. For example, we want to have e-connectivity between clinics and hospitals as well, simply because if a person moves from one area to another, there's still a high level of migrancy in this society we have. You know, just by looking onto the computer, you can tell they were in a hospital in Johannesburg last month, and now they're in Fulendlele or wherever, and in a clinic, and what the state of health of the person concerned is. So in short, yes, that's on the cards. The question, though, is on e-governance as a whole. We need a national e-government strategy. This ICT policy review is going to come out with a green paper stroke discussion document by the end of November. That's going to be on the agenda, but it's the Department of Health that has to work closely with us in this regard. We agree with what Mr. Love says. It's just a matter of implementing it over time.
Okay. Table 23, Professor Kunene.
Morning, Minister, and everyone. Minister, my question basically, it talks to the DTT training plan. which my thinking it's supposed to have been started by now if we are looking at the cut-off date of 2015 and the people that needs to be trained in regarding all this value chain that talks to the DTT program. When are we expecting the training to start, and how this training will impact on our people? Basically, the people in deep rural areas and those people that needs to be trained to uptake this set-top box thing. Thank you.
Yes, that is very much on the agenda of DOC, Department of Communications. Firstly, we should stress that Centec has already provided the infrastructure for digital terrestrial television to about 80% of the country. By March, it will be 84%, March next year, end of the financial year. 16% of the country will not get digital terrestrial television because they'll be reached by satellite for a variety of reasons, topography and so on. There are experts within the department who, if they have space, could explain better than I could. On the training, we also have an education program, which actually we're lagging behind because of the impasse currently over set-top box control stroke conditional access. That advertising process to make the public aware. And the training program, I think SABC can speak for itself. They also have started some sort of training program. The DG is here, Rosie Sekesi. If there's space, maybe she wants to add to what I've just said. We have started the process, but really it's slightly stalled because of this impasse over control or not, or control with conditional access.
Right.
But in short, you're absolutely right. We need to fast track that, and we really need to get going.
All right, okay, I'm going to hurry us along a little bit. Table 24, Mpo. You write like a doctor, so you might have to fix this up. Is this Twai? Mpo, I know I've tortured this, but I genuinely... You need to send an email, rather.
Honorable Minister...
Can you just say your names?
Mpo Twai.
Oh, Twai, okay.
SABC, Ms. Chabalala, and Telecom Sipo Mazbuze. Morning, colleagues. It is not actually a question. I just wanted to say that we are on the same page with the Honorable Minister. We have licenses, ECNS, ECN, and all that. So we will be playing a pivotal role in your department. So expect us for an appointment. Thank you.
Okay. Short and sweet. I don't think it needs a...
Fine. You know how to contact us, yes.
Table 17, Keith Tabo.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Peter. I think as the citizens of this country, we should acknowledge that the DOC doesn't have that capacity to deliver DTT on its own. It's a fact. We've traveled with the research all over the world. Minister, it is very imperative that we, as a country, bring in Department of Science and Technology, Department of Trade and Industry, DOC, bring industry players and push this as a job creation chart like other countries did in Asia and South America and all that. One more, we should also have to comprehend and understand the socio-economic implications of the encryption. That 5th year costs on royalty for integration, upgrading, software application of that box will cost this country skills and jobs and money. So we have to understand what is this DTT. It is very important that we have taken a resolution on the 19th of June. Citizens, inclusive of Sanko, Contralesa, Progressive Women Movement, and the industry, they were all the SABC, Centec, and everyone. We agreed on the resolution that this conditional access is really a witchcraft. So that resolution was just to be passed on and to be developed into a policy. We are surprised that why do you resuscitate it? Because it was a closed chapter and a closed book. I thank you.
Well, there are a variety of stakeholders, not just Mr. Keith Tabo's organization. Our concern as government is fundamentally the poor and the disadvantaged. And that is the pivot around which this government operates. And we are doing what we have to do. You can't just jettison government policy by the meeting of June 19th. We have communicated that to NAMAC and everybody else, that we have to follow the procedures. Because if we do not, there are people who've already subjected applications for tender, and we've extended the date each time. Some of them have already, it seems, set up set-top boxes with a conditional access device, and they could challenge us. So we have said to everybody that go through the process. You can't just have a meeting on the 19th of June, whether it was in the ministry or department or wherever, and then change policy. You'll have to go through the cabinet processes. And this process that is currently being facilitated by independent facilitators is meant to address those things, so that if people challenge us, we are clear that everybody was given a chance. Now, beyond the broadcasters, the phase 2 of the facilitation was meant to be bringing in the private sector stakeholders in respect of the manufacture of set-top box. But as far as the industry is, as far as the government policy is concerned, we would be foolhardy not to create space, once again, may I repeat, for emerging entrepreneurs. On that, there's no disagreement.
All right, so no sangoma required to undo the witchcraft.
No. It won't work in a court of law for us.
All right.
And we can't say that it's witchcraft and get away in a court of law.
Okay.
So really, we have no choice but to do what we're doing.
Colin McKenzie, table 24, where are you? Colin McKenzie.
Good morning, Honourable Minister. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I think it's so great that within such a short term of you being in your office, we've met so many times. There's a number of questions, and some have been cleared, and some are just here for clarity. Regarding the encryption and the DTT box, I think we've engaged and we've spoken about this on a number of occasions. One of the main fears and the questions that I have towards you is that if we do not move on, are we going the e-tolling route where the ordinary consumer and people are going to suffer on this because of a certain role player that keeps stalling the processes, and I'm not going to lie about it, and that's ETV, that has taken the process to court and now comes through and reignites this. What are we doing to alleviate this process from your office? And then in terms of communicating to the poor of the poor, in terms of the communities that we serve, what is your strategy and your plan around that? Because most of these people do not understand what a DTT box has and how they will use it. So what is your marketing strategy and your forms of platform that you're going to use going forward? Thank you.
Okay.
What's happening here, regrettably, is people are positioning themselves who are part of the facilitation process. So I'm not going to respond to the first part. That is a matter that's being facilitated.
Okay.
And it's not fair on ETV. I don't know if they're here. So I think that I'm not going to answer. Because if I do, I'm undermining the facilitation process. And I can't afford to do that. It's wrong for a minister or a deputy minister. Well, she's not here. So no, I'm not going to respond to that. I think it's unnecessary in this forum. The second aspect, as I said, there is a whole program that, I mean, we're excruciatingly aware. If the gentleman who represents community broadcasting has got specific proposal, bring them. Obviously, we're acutely aware, excruciatingly aware, that people in the rural areas do not have, due to the circumstances they find themselves in, not any subjective failure on their part, a sense of how to use these decoders and so on. So if you've got further proposals beyond what he's familiar with, this idea that Keith Thabo has got is very much on our agenda, which is to bring all the stakeholders together. As I've repeatedly said, my main message today is government is opening its doors wider to you.
Right.
Play your role, but recognize that it's the majority party that got elected, and it has a responsibility to govern. So as long as we understand that, fine. So I think that we're on course, provided this impasse is overcome, and we're giving it another 2 weeks or so, and then we're moving on.
Okay. Via Twitter, Vanessa Perumal says, how do small businesses enter this sector?
Well, all of the things we're seeking to do is meant to do precisely that. I mentioned, for example, there are 410,000 businesses that are SMEs which are online, and they're benefiting. The profit margins are far higher than those businesses that are not online. One can mention, for example, as I said, the M-Pesa experience in Kenya, where those who don't have access to a bank account can use their cell phones to access and to actually have transactions over their mobiles. I think the mobile operators should do more also to inform people of this huge, wonderful potential the mobile phone, the cell phone has, to create spaces for self-employment and growth. I was looking at the statistics last night, about the number of youth that are actually using Facebook. It's astonishing. And I asked one of the researchers in our department last week, in a different context, preparing a speech for something else, is this really reflective of the townships, the historically disadvantaged areas? And he says, you're wrong, Minister. It actually is. It's not your relatively privileged minorities. It's actually being increasingly used by the historically disadvantaged. And, one of the things that struck me last night as I organized my thoughts on what I would say is how much actually, given we have youth unemployment, this can be used, this mobile phone, to at least use technology and ICT as a form of addressing the high levels of youth unemployment. So yes, there are marvelous opportunities between our department, other departments, the ICT sector, so the private mobile operators. All of us have a responsibility to educate people on the huge potential of the mobile phone, let alone other aspects of ICT, to create spaces for small and emerging entities.
Okay. Table 9, Samuel, is it Samuel Mungadze?
Morning, Minister. Thank you so much for yesterday, your views on our post office. I think my first question it regards the LLU and Spectrum. I think there's been a lot of waiting.
Just tell us what LLU is.
Okay, local loop unbundling. There's been a lot of waiting and anxiety from the industry in terms of direction from the department. When will the department have the direction, policy direction, that is the policy on LLU and Spectrum? Secondly, you did speak on cost to communicate. I'm glad the chairperson of ICASA is here. There is also issue of quality, because I think besides the cost to communicate, I don't know what kind of work ICASA has been doing. Probably I need to be enlightened, because what has been happening, I think, if you look at the tariffs, besides Cell C and Telkom Mobile, the rest of them have been coming up with packages rather than slashing the tariffs. The second issue is quality of service. What is ICASA doing, or the department has to do in monitoring quality of service? Of late now, even in Gauteng, you actually have people who are selling network boosters. That is something that I really need to get some clarity on. Thank you.
Okay, so are you talking about dropping calls and things like this, interruptions when you're in the internet and you're downloading stuff? Okay.
ICASA is looking at that. I think that question is more appropriately directed to Dr. Stephen Mkove, and I think he should respond. And on local loop unbundling, they have regulations out on the quality of calls, the dropped calls. Myself also, I explained to the mobile operator who came to see me, I won't mention the name, that actually myself, I'm having huge problems at the moment, right? And each time I'm told by the experts, each time you have a missed call or a dropped call, you're paying for it actually. But I think the best person to speak about this is that it's not the department. We provided the policy directors, though we need to update them.
Sure.
Dr. Mkove.
Yeah, I appreciate this kind of questions. I also get my calls dropped as chair. And I don't like that. So we are going to have a dedicated call center. You all said ICASA is a weak regulatory body, and we agree. And the reason we were weak is because we're not well funded. And why were we not well funded? It is because even the little monies we're getting, we couldn't manage it well. We always got qualified audit. Now we have a clean audit. Now, I do hope that you are going to now look, when our minister approves this new funding model of ICASA, you know, in our strategic objective, we have ways of modernizing ICASA, where some of these things can be monitored. At the moment, the minister has rightfully pointed out that the regulatory body that we manage people who have lots of monies and who cheat too in terms of managing these things. But once we have automated ICASA, we can also manage these things in a more excellent way. Thank you, Minister.
Okay.
Peter,
thank
you see here, they say we are politicians are elitist and so on. Well, when it comes to drop calls, we're all equal.
Suffer equally.
Right? And for them to annoy our Baba, the veteran, right? The ICASA chair, that alone means they must get things going.
All right. Is there some? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Peter Curtis. I work under Dr. Stephen Grube. With regards to local loop unbundling, we issued draft regulations on local loop unbundling. The public consultation and written representations are due on the 25th of October. So please are looking forward to your participation in that. And we view this as a final closure to this chapter that we've been involved in for more than 5 years now. With regards to quality of service, ICASA does do regular drive tests at least every 4 times a year. And to date, we have found that the operators in general do meet our quality of service standards, but there has been a slight drop. As everybody here talks about anecdotally, your discussion drops during the day. That is something we are engaging with the licensees. And with regards to billing, one of the reasons that everything is now charged on a per second billing process is to ensure that end users are not paying for that minute that you think you've paid for when the call's dropped. So with regards to operators and ICASA, now nobody pays for that extra fee. Everything is now on a per second billing environment. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a representative from the service providers? Because we're hearing from the authorities and the regulators.
Yeah.
Vodacom, SABC, please can we get one of you to stand up and be brave, face the people. All right, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
thank you,
just say who you are and who you represent first.
It's Mutibi Ramusi from SABC. I can assure you that part of our strategy, as you've seen, we've dropped our rates. We're busy with our investment. There are other issues that are beyond our control. Issues of spectrum, because as you know, Minister, we need capacity. But as SABC, we continue to commit ourselves to make sure that we provide good quality of service. But there is an investment that has been set aside for that, and we will continue to give you the better rates. Thanks.
All right, so there's a guy called Cedric Mkabele who says that we're number 23 on the continent in terms of cost of calls. Are we going to go up that thing shortly? Somebody else? That was SABC. Dr. Armstrong. Telkom. Table, he's come forward, he's here. I've nominated him. Our friendship may be in jeopardy now. So Telkom, how do we move from 23 and improve to be number 1, as in the cheapest on the continent?
Thank you so much, Peter. I think you do more. What we launched our Simsonke rate about 2 months ago, which is 29 cents a minute, on a per second basis. So if everybody else could follow that, I think we'd move up the rankings quite quickly.
Okay, all right, short and sweet. All right, one last question from Walter Betchel, table number 2. There we go. Thank you all, Walter.
Thank you. Minister, ladies and gentlemen, most interesting listening to, I'm the CEO of Tel3. We have the job bringing the prices down by being competitive. I'm an Austrian. I'm since 30 years in the country, but also in other countries. And I appreciate very much what the minister said, specifically also bringing the prices down and all the different things. And I'm aware it's not an easy job.
Oh, I have to hurry you up, so get straight to the question.
So my question here is, what are we doing? One of the things that hasn't been mentioned at all was carrier pre-select. One of the things that has been very, very efficient in other countries to do it. So let's stop here.
Okay, all right.
Okay, that's
You've got
useful.
30 seconds to answer that.
Just to say there's a link between digital migration, broadband, and spectrum. The three are interrelated. So we hope if things work out by the end of this financial year, we will be able to release spectrum, as I said in my formal input. But I thank you all for your useful comments. There are department officials noting everything, and we will have a report on what you've raised. And you can always come back to us before the elections and ask, hey, Yunus, what did you do? You were here on the 30th of September, and you said these things. I'm happy to come back if you want me, or the deputy minister, whoever.
All right. Minister, we're going to have to leave the conversation
Thank
there,
you
but
indeed.
thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, the Minister of Communications, Minister Yunus Carrim.